Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are doing a special discussion on what our favorite pedals are for shoegaze. I have with me Alex and Nick from zZounds. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course,
Yeah,
happy to be
of
here.
course.
What is shoegaze, though? I know some people out there might not be familiar with it as a genre, but how about you guys open the floor right now with what shoegaze is to you personally and kind of thoughts, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, shoegaze can be the genre, which I think is sort of a break off of like indie rock. It has a lot of typical, I guess, characteristics where it's kind of like a wall of sound. You like
Mhm.
to me, I think of people actually gazing at their shoes because they have a gigantic pedal board
For sure.
that they're clicking all their pedals on because they're using a lot of effects to create these like lush atmospheres, but also usually pretty saturated, whether it be with overdrive, distortion, fuzz, etc. Um, so I think of that as the genre of music, but then you could also use shoegaze as kind of a descriptor, which could apply to a lot of other genres of music too. Like even you get into like post rock or just indie rock, a lot of indie rock in general.
Totally.
Um, just a lot of ambient styles maybe would be very similar to shoegaze, but less overdriven, less saturated. So, yeah, it's kind of a broad, it can be a broad term. But as far as the genre goes, I definitely think of those like overdriven, saturated wall of sound styles.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Isn't it funny how it's so hard to quantify what a shoegaze sound is? Because over the years, I feel like it's just been so many different things at this point. But we all can agree that pedals are obviously like the crux of kind of most of the guitar players' approaches to it, right?
Or
Um,
just some sort of effect in general. I mean, like even back in the day with Kevin Shields, like layering multiple clean guitars to get just wacky sounds in studio.
for sure.
And Alex touched on saturation. I think that's such a huge part of it. Um,
Oh,
Even
yeah.
apart from the effect, just the pure production aspect of it.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I do think fuzz and distortions and everything and the way they would cascade them into and out of other effects was always really interesting because it just makes it that sort of singular sound, right? At least in the like 80s, 90s shoegaze sense of it. So with that being said, I mean, did you guys have a tough time picking just three pedals for shoegaze? Because I know I did, narrowing it down.
No.
No, well, it wasn't hard at all. You had your
You
three
gotta
ready to
think
go.
you gotta think desert island. You're going on Survivor. Jeff Probst wants you to have 3 shoegaze pedals. The ranking was there for me.
Cool. So how about you start it off then, Nick? If you had
Sure.
to start us off, what was your first choice for your
We
top
already mentioned the
shoegaze?
forefather, so we gotta
Mhm.
have the Shields blender.
Nice.
That is number 1 for me. I bought it at midnight. I own this. I love it. Always on the board, takes up so much space, but it's gotta be the number 1. It's got the Shield's name on it. It's vintage inspired, and it just brings all the best stuff from this era of Fender effects and makes it easy to use for a modern generation of guitar players.
Mhm.
And I need that, so it's nice to have that. Um, you know, incredibly, incredibly potent fuzz tones out of this thing. Um, you know, we touched on saturation. This is it. I mean, that you can't layer too many of them in a mix, but it's brutal. One of the things I will say, if you kind of you can turn on or off the high octave on this, and there's also an expand switch. So it's really cool if you are layering a lot of them. I do a lot of
Mhm.
studio work. If you need to get that upper echelon, you need to break through, you can do it in this. And it's just kind of one of those where I love fuzz. I have so many fuzz pedals. It was just like for this, it was just a no brainer. It had
Nice.
to be Shield Splendor. Yeah, it's awesome. I could talk about this for the entire time, but but I won't. But incredible. Just you can't if you're starting with. I'm glad you guys mentioned, fuzz and saturation. If you're starting with
Mhm.
that, I'm starting with that. Um, Another MB V inspired effect for me is the Catlin Bred Soft Focus, or FX40.
Cool.
Based off of the Yamaha FX500 patch for soft focus reverb. And this is like total opposite, super simple. Even when everything's at 0, you're just getting a little peek through of that almost kind of, it's a reverb, but it's almost just kind of like that digital rack reverb. I don't know. It's just so cool how it just emulates that late 80s, early 90s rack effect reverb. So cool.
Sweet.
The modulation on this is awesome. It is a shoegaze button. That's like literally that's the marketing, and that's what it is. I love it. It's also always on my board.
Nice.
I love it. You click it and you're in a different world. And I mean, this is just a workstation for my third one, and I think this is going to be appearing everywhere on everybody's boards very soon, if not already. But the new Chi Etherealizer, which is just Walrus's approach at, hey, just throw every single thing you can in series or parallel in one pedal. I consider it a multi-effect. I mean, and it is. So if you're looking for one pedal, just grab that. I mean, you can cycle through presets to get kind of an idea. I was blown away. I mean, it's so fun.
What is that pedal exactly?
Well, it's a ton of modulation. So
Okay.
it's kind of, imagine it like a console. That's how I see it, where these are all your channels. There's mix at the top where you can mix all the different channels together. Like I said, in series or parallel, totally independent, or just cascading into each other. And there's different selections here. So there's the grain section, which is kind of like, there's two different selections on it. It's really cool. They create these things in the first mode, which is grain clouds, which kind of sparkles in what you're playing, but in these like little millisecond versions, kind of just reflecting back at you. Okay. Super inspirational. You can make these really cool lines, and it sounds awesome with just like a clean Tele or Jazzmaster. I mean, just like, it's gorgeous, immediately gorgeous. That also delay here, going to that, you can also select 3 different delays. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's delay. And then chorus, which is cool, which has a tri or stereo mode, also mixable, and then rate and depth. Super simple and straightforward as well, if you start looking at it that way. Yeah. And then the mix with the dry in the beginning, with tone, and then space. And it's when you start looking about it that way, it's a little simpler, because I mean, I got it and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, what is this? Tap tempo's super rad. There's a freeze function, super rad. Play some cool, some cool chords and just kind of play over it. That's where grain comes in, and you can start adding stuff. I mean, it's just a idea machine. And I mean, I feel like I have not even scratched the surface. I've spent hours on it, and it is gorgeous right out of the box. I mean, I was like, am I playing that? You know, it's one of those pedals. So I love it. So cool. And you know, so something that's a modern kind of take on a lot of these into one that I personally haven't really seen, other than in like a more traditional multi-effect style pedal. I think it does it better than anybody. So I really enjoy it. And yeah, what's better than that? Some good cheap.
Nice. Was that a newer Walrus pedal you said then?
It is. Yeah. I was trying to keep it evergreen, but yeah, it is.
And I'm also glad that you mentioned that the different perspective shift on operating it is the secret right there. Because we're like, yeah, this is so easy. And it's got like 12.
Oh, man. I know it's going to sound, as like coming from like an expert, like, oh, yeah, it's so simple. Like, look at, I mean,
so easy.
It couldn't be easier. Walrus blew it out of the park. But it really, if you think about it that way, and I didn't look at it that way originally, and then when you kind of start looking at it, you're like, okay, just like you look at a console, you're like, this is insane, there's too much.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, we're looking at one channel here, let's take it one by one. And yeah, you can build, no two effects are going to be the same. You're gonna get lost in this thing, so highly recommend it.
Love it. So truly, you'll be gazing at your shoes. while you
Yes.
look at
Oh
them.
yeah, my back hurts from it, trust me.
Yeah. Neck problems galore.
Yes.
So of those three, you think those are your desert island? Like you can get max shoegaze
Yeah.
tones from all that.
Today, those are definitely desert island. For that, I mean, if we've got to take a tuner, I'll do it, but I'll figure that out. I would maybe leave the TU3 at home. But
No,
yeah,
who needs to be in tune? You're awash in
I
effect.
know,
It's
I
fine,
know,
you
right?
It's fine. Yeah. All right. So thanks, dude. That actually was really awesome. I was not even familiar with that new Walrus, so that'll be something to chew on later.
Oh yeah,
You guys want me to go next, or Alex,
Let's
you want
go.
to dive in?
No, yeah, you go. You
Yeah.
got it.
Sure. Okay, so I had a couple standard ones and a special one that's been on my board for years that I've been really loving. But also to just start out with a fuzz, I have a propensity for like old, very like grainy and kind of like lush fuzzes. So I went with the Warm Audio Foxy tone box, which is obviously a Fox Tone Machine 70s clone with its velvet exterior and everything. So I know it's a clone pedal, but this thing has been the most cooperative with any type of amp I've put it through. So I had really good success on recording a record years ago with just a cranked Fender and this, and somehow it was not a shrill mess. This was absolutely the like fuzz wall that I needed. So I love it for the octave up as well, which is also so funny, Nick, that you mentioned your octave up on
Yeah.
the fuzz too. I was like, come on, you just gotta have it. So I'm going with this bad boy because I just love throwing this before or after reverbs and delays because it just does very wonky, cool things. So this is the first one. And the EQ on it is actually, the shelving on it is pretty interesting. So it's not like totally dark when it's on the one end and not totally bright on the other. So anyways, the Warm Audio Foxy Tone Box.
Awesome.
My next one is another familiar classic, but the DL4.
Yes.
Gotta do this just because there's just too much sweet functionality on the Mark II, and they added the looper and all the extra functionality with that. That's easier. So I just love doing like weird cascading loops that also have all of that shoegaze effects on it, especially because these days I've been playing in this math rock group. It's just a duo with a drummer, and so I have to fill out absolute max sound with it. So I've been abusing the hell out of this thing too. Not much else I need to say about this one. We all know it. We all love it. This thing is just an absolute beast, though. Specifically, like the Elephant Man and the Euclidean reverb on it. All these are just so freaking sweet. So DL4, love that, and the fact that I can stack effects on it with a reverb and a delay.
Oh man, just in time as well. Minus the Bear is reuniting. So
I was gonna say, like the way they would always use this pedal was classic back in the
you
day.
can dance on those things. I didn't know that until I saw them.
Yeah. It's absolutely just a legendary pedal. So I've been trying to get it off of my board, but it just keeps ending up back on there, which says it all right there, right? So the last one, and Nick, I thought you were going to pick this one too because you name dropped it the other day, but since this came out, it also has not left my board, and I'm going with the Walrus Lower. This thing is, yeah, see, you got one in arm's reach. This thing is absolutely incredible. It's impossible to describe and impossible to fully master, I feel like, because like you said, it's just infinite with the possibilities of tweaking with it, because there's two different feedback loops on it that it utilizes. So it's like just messing with the feedback versus the regen knob will just add all this craziness there. But specifically the mod knob and the X knob and how everything works in tandem like that is just unreal. Plus the fact that the program knob switches between like a reverse delay into a forward delay, or a one reverb into a reverse delay, or a forward, or an octave up or an octave down effect. So my favorite has been using it as an octave up with the reverse function. I believe that's mode 2. And so in the math rock group, it's like I'll just hit a chord and then the tail is just like doing all the work for me, basically, right? Just like hitting a basic chord and just letting that wash out everything is just incredible. So this is like an absolutely was a game changer pedal, and I've played this on my board for years since this came out. It has not left. So I know I'm over here just blabbing on and on about that one, but I know you're a big fan of that one, Nick, but Alex, if you haven't played this one is so freaking sweet. So
You convinced me.
yeah, it's deep. This thing gets deep. Like, I still sometimes pull up the manual like online just to be like, wait, what mode is this? Like, am I actually using this correctly? So I would highly recommend this if you want just washed out texture. Don't sleep on the low octave either. That low octave effect on it too is just crushing when I'm down tuned in C sharp and stuff. It's just like hitting a low note is like octave down C sharp effect in the background. Monstrous. Throw the Foxy tone box in it. Game over, man. Game over. So anyways, those are my 3 picks. So Alex, I know you had mentioned before we started, you had some personal ones for you that are unique. So
well, I think I kind of cheated in that Jeff Probst would not be happy with me, Nick, because I didn't really choose my desert island. I just said, let's just already assume that I have a big muff on my board and I have a transparent overdrive and all these other things, right? So then I decided to go maybe with some effects that would be helpful with a shoegaze tone or something that could add a really cool flavor, but wouldn't necessarily be just a drive pedal, you know? So the first thing that I instantly was going to was some kind of like combo delay reverb, which has already been mentioned multiple times in this discussion. I for a long time used this pedal. It's not around anymore, but it's an RV3. It's one of the really OG boss delay reverbs. And a spiritual successor to that I've always loved is the Avalanche run. This is the Earthquaker Devices pedal. This is the V2. One thing I really like about the V2 is they added stereo, which for anybody doing studio work, if you're not using stereo, which I mean, even if you're playing out, you could try and run stereo, but nobody wants to carry 2 amps. So, but in the studio, stereo is just it's a no-brainer. It's incredible. And this pedal just kind of does it all. It has multiple delay modes. You have your classic combined reverb and delay. You have your your reverse delay mode, and then you have the swell mode, which is kind of like an auto swell sort of thing. Especially in a lot of like praise and worship circles and stuff, we see that be a really common thing. But just in any kind of ambient worships, any kind of ambient guitar style, that swell function is really popular. One thing I really like is you have a nice tone control for the delay repeats. Something that can be a little bit of a task with these delay and reverb pedals is getting your actual guitar to cut through all your lush trails. But if you really darken the tone of those repeats, you can create a huge underbed and still come out on top of your trails, which is nice. And then one thing I really like to use, so again, I do a lot of studio work like Nick, and I'm used to being able to turn knobs while I'm doing things. But a lot of times while you're playing, you can't really do that. And so sometimes it can be a little tough to be expressive while you're playing, which this actually does have an expression pedal output, which you can control multiple parameters like your delay repeat times and do crazy effects or make it self-oscillate by controlling the repeats knob. But I really like that they just have a self-oscillation function by holding down the tab. And you can make it go crazy. And I've always really enjoyed using that as like an expression tool. So yeah, a combo delay reverb, I think it's going to be a standard on most shoegaze boards, especially because most shoegaze boards are going to include more than one delay and or reverb.
Yeah, so true.
Having 2 in 1 boxes is always a plus. So yeah, so that's an instant standard on any shoegaze board. But one thing that could be a cool addition to that, we've talked a lot about using modulation in shoegaze. Chorus, flangers, etc. are very popular in shoegaze styles of music. I went a little weird with my pick on this one. I chose the ZVEX Instant Lo-Fi Junky.
Oh, I was going to pick that one too. Okay. I was literally about to pick that one. Oh, a very contentious pedal in the shoegaze world,
Yes. Yeah. So it can be used as a pretty standard chorus, and the way you would do that is you just filter in a little bit of the lo-fi signal, and you can use it more like a standard chorus pedal in that way, and get pretty standard shoegaze tones out of it. But you can also use it for what it's really meant for, which is that lo-fi tone. And what I think is so cool about that for shoegaze styles of music is, you know, now we're seeing shoegaze maybe even get into like the dream pop arena and like indie rock and all these things that lo-fi is really popular in those arenas. And one thing I really like about this is the selectable waveforms. If you select something like a square wave, you can even compose more rhythmic sections with the way that it ramps up into those waves. So I just think it's a cool pick that can cover modulation, but also can make some really interesting, more unique tones that you wouldn't always have available to you on a shoegaze board. So it's a little bit of it's not a Swiss Army knife. It's certainly not a Swiss Army knife, but it can be used as a chorus and also as a really interesting additional effect.
For sure. God, that's so funny that you picked that one. No, what were you going to say, Nick?
No, I was just going to say that is such a cool pick. I love that.
Yeah, I had it. I have it right here over on the ground next to me, but I yesterday swapped it out because I was like, you know what? I think I want to put the lower in there because it's always on my board. But so funny because you actually prefaced it with like, well, I don't know, this is a really weird one. If we both pick the same one,
yeah,
that would have been amazing.
Totally unique.
Yeah, it stands for itself, right? It's just a fun, like, bizarre pedal, and I love the way that it like almost over compresses as well with the function there. And you could use that really musically though when you're doing that wall of sound stuff. So I love that thing. The only thing I like using is maybe like a boost or something else that's bright before or after it, just to lift it a little bit because it gets kind of dark once you engage the lo-fi because the treble gets shelved off pretty hard, you know?
Yeah, it definitely has a very filtered sound. But I think like in certain scenarios, even that filtered sound can be really nice, the really dark sound. But cutting through a mix and playing through that, yeah, I agree. You definitely want something to help you get a little lift. Some sort of high shelf afterwards.
It's so cool though, right? It's like that's the sound. And I actually was trying to do that with a trio before, and it was like too good. Like I could only use it like one song, and then I couldn't turn it on again because everybody would be like, "What was that sound?" You know? Like,
yeah,
it became too singular. So that's how good.
Yes, yeah. It's a very singular sound, but a very cool sound, and it's stuck around for a long time. You know, I feel like one thing that's nice about the Lo-Fi Junky is the lo-fi setting, the lo-fi, you know, we've seen so many lo-fi plugins, we've seen so many people using tape decks, we've seen so much interesting stuff in the lo-fi space over the last few years, but the Lo-Fi Junky was kind of around right before all that stuff happened. So they've really been on it from the beginning. zVex has always been known for creating really cool stuff, and they jumped on it even before I feel like the trend really ramped up. So kudos to them for beating it.
Yeah. Uber cool.
And one thing that's cool about this too, just another addition, is that they also have a Eurorack unit for it now too. Because like myself, I'm a big synth guy, and I use this on synths all the time. And a Eurorack unit is a great way to implement it into a synth setup or obviously a Eurorack synth setup. So, all right,
that's good to know. I had no idea they had a Eurorack. That's sweet.
Yeah, it's very cool addition that they added a couple years ago. So the last pedal that I wanted to get into, you know, earlier Nick mentioned kind of shoegaze in a box, and this is sort of that, but a little weirder, and that's the Earthquaker and Death by Audio Time Shadows.
Oh yeah.
So this one's a little weird too. It has 3 settings. This was a collaboration between Earthquaker Devices and Death by Audio. Both are very well known in the shoegaze space and just in any pedal community for making wacky effects, for making incredibly unique effects, for making stuff that's both musical and really cool. And so them coming together on a pedal is like bread and butter. So they have 3 settings on here. There's an Earthquaker circuit, a Death by Audio circuit, and a circuit in the middle, which kind of combines the two, and that gets incredibly crazy. But I feel like the 2 circuits, the Earthquaker circuit and the Death by Audio circuit, are a little better used by themselves. Basically, the Earthquaker circuit is kind of a fuzz, kind of a sub-synth. It basically is like an octave down, aggressive sub-synth sound. It's basically a fuzz, though. And it can be combined with the delay that's built in. And once you have fuzz and delay, you're already shoegaze. So so yeah, this is great for that. And one thing I really like about it too is there's an expression pedal input for this. Again, going back to being expressive on our playing, you can sweep the filter on this like you would with a synth. So that's a really cool addition to this that I feel like makes it unique and expressive and something that'll help you create more evolving textures. Because obviously shoegaze music can be very textural, but if we don't add motion to it, it's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
So this is a great way to keep it moving. Or any type of like LFO generating pedal that you could plug in here could do that without you having to touch a pedal. Then you can switch over to the Death by Audio circuit, which is much more of just like a particle style delay. And it can really get very ambient, very washy. And yeah, I mean, another thing I forgot to mention about this is that you can set up recallable presets, which is not very common on a pedal of this size, or especially a pedal with only one button. So yeah, I feel like that's something that's really nice about this pedal, but the delay in here is actually like a highly resonant, has like a highly resonant filter on it, basically with like a really steep Q. And you can use an expression pedal or expression unit to sweep that filter as well, and basically sweep that highly resonant filter. And yeah, I guess I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's essentially just like how you would on a synth. You're sweeping a resonant filter and creating this like high overtone that's moving. Again, very expressive and can be really cool in combination with these delays, and can almost add like an octave up effect to your delay trails. And so yeah, that's why I really like this one, because again, it's kind of shoegaze in a box. It's got that fuzz quality to it. It's got the delay. It can be really ethereal, but it can be really aggressive. You can mess with it in your signal chain, putting it in different places to affect your other pedals in weird ways. It's just such a cool pedal, such a cool collaboration. And again, it's kind of a space saver, doing a lot of things in one small enclosure. So yeah, that's my third pedal.
I would say that is a phenomenal pick, just because, yeah, that pedal is wild. Got a funny story for you guys. We did our GearWire podcast show last year, and Rob Scallon, internet sensation Rob Scallon, came on, and we did a mystery unboxing of an Earthquaker pedal. And lo and behold, it was the Time Shadows. So you can watch one of our first or second episodes of the show if you're curious out there, guys, to see me and Rob absolutely just eating it, trying to figure out in real time how to work this pedal. That's so absolutely complex and
it's a very bonkers pedal. Yeah. And I imagine if you ever turned on that third mode, it's almost hard to figure out how to use it musically. If you're familiar with the Rainbow Machine, it can be very much like that. Those cascading, delay time modulating trails that just, they create a unique texture that, I mean, when you hear it, you're like, okay, that's an Earthquaker pedal.
Yeah, a labor of love, right?
Yes.
God, I love it though. That's also a really excellent, unique pick, just because that thing is deep. Also, yeah, dialing that in with other effects. I never got the chance to experience that, but now I'm curious. Now I think I got to get me a Time Shadows now. Actually, I guess that's it though, guys. You guys got anything else you wanted to add in terms of pedals, thoughts, shoegaze? Want to look at your shoes for a little bit here?
Awesome picks, everybody.
Yeah,
I mean, if we were all on one island, imagine that board.
Imagine the sounds they would hear. Surely we would be saved.
Yeah.
Surely.
I love the ZVEX love. That's awesome. That was a really cool pick. I mean, Walrus, if that's any indication, they are killing it.
For sure.
It's cool that we touched on Earthquaker. I mean, there's so many great pedals, especially nowadays. I mean, I think about like the kids these days have so many great options for such a great offering, and totally, I mean, just so many different price points. You can get in at almost any price point and be able to just make incredible sounds right off the rip. So
agreed.
We're in a golden age. If anything, we're in a golden age.
Oh yeah. The choices are innumerable, and it's overwhelming to everybody in the absolute best way. So guys, Nick, Alex, thanks so much again for coming on and just just kind of talking gear. So stay tuned, guys. You can check out all these pedals at zZounds, and also we're going to be doing some future videos on overdrives and modulation. So stay tuned for future stuff with us. But once again, guys, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Justin. I appreciate it.
For sure. See you guys later.